Welcome back to the latest episode of the Key and Mang audio experience. I'm your host, Mang, as always, joined by my fellow co-host, Key. Key, what's good?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, can't complain. Today we got another special one. We got the other co-founder of PPT Grind out in Tampa, Florida, Dr. Joseph Ngugi. Joseph, what's good?
What's up? What's up? Pleasure to be here. Appreciate y'all.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time to come on the pod. We just want
Anytime.
to open it up to kind of tell us your backstory and how you got to where you're at right now.
Oh, wow. So I'm a physical therapist by training. And I guess in short, I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. I was born in East Africa, came to the States when I was a kid. And over time, you basically have certain things that are the norm, I guess, in terms of careers to go into. And some of them were engineering, being a lawyer, being a physician. And so when I basically presented this idea of being a physical therapist, it was foreign. It was like, what? What does that even mean? And even the way I found physical therapy was by accident. It was in high school. We basically had people coming in to speak to our to us as students, and they were alumnus of the school, and they basically wanted to share what their professions were like, answer any questions. And naturally I was like, okay, I know what my big three are, because that's what I've been told to basically entertain. And there was a lawyer there and there was a physician there. I tried to do both. One of them was booked up, so I did what any other good high school student would do. I picked the next profession with most of my friends in it, and so that happened to be the physical therapist. I had no idea what PTs really did. I knew some of my classmates had gone to PT as kids because injuries and stuff like that. But all I could remember thinking in that room was, wait a minute, like, she gets paid to do that? Like, that's all I can remember thinking. And from that day, I pretty much fell in love with the profession and what it could do and what it had the potential to do. So did my research, kind of was still back and forth between, PT and now being a physician. I was locked in on medicine, and then eventually locked in with PT for real. But that day, like, if that day did not happen, I would have never been a PT, because I can't recall another time where I was introduced to physical therapy again. And so every other time was me actually seeking it out. So yeah, now I'm a PT. Somewhere along the lines, I got a little frustrated with some of my classmates being told that they could not qualify for PT school because they were struggling academically after our freshman year. The idea of that didn't make too much sense. So created a little project on our campus. Casey, my business partner, later joined in on that. And that project later turned into a business that has now gone online and is now called Pre-PT Grind. It's actually two businesses now, but initially it was Pre-PT Grind, and now we help students get into school and figure out their way financially through this healthcare game, because there's so much potential. Like, PT has a lot of potential, but we're not taught that. So we're here to make that known for real. So that's the fastest I've ever summarized that. So I hope that gave y'all a lot.
Like, I'm sure you had to do that a lot, so you probably got a lot of practice coming in now, huh? But speaking of the big three, that's mad funny that you say the big three, because when I was growing up, those were my three options too. And as soon as you say you want to do something that's not in the big three, you get that look of like, what are you doing? Like, why? And so
Fact.
it's funny every time I hear that, and it's like, yeah, I had those same options too, and then you end up doing the thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you, you did it. And they're like, yeah, I told you, you just gotta listen to me. But
Every time.
when you started the PPT success program out on your campus, did you, when you're looking back on now, did you envision it being as big as it is now?
Absolutely not. I wanted it to work. So I guess my biggest vision was, like, I wanted it to save at least a few students from having to give in to someone else believing that they would never have a shot. And I just wanted it to basically disprove a few faculty members. And it was more just like frustration, honestly. And so like, in my eyes, if it got a few students into school that were declared to not have been, good candidates, because their grades had been lower at one point or whatever, like, that to me was the dream, and I would have been happy. Like, my plan was to do what I could until I graduated, and then after I graduated, hope it continues, and then we're good to go. Like, there actually was a point where one of our coaches, because Casey came on as a coach for that version of it. One of our coaches, I was planning on presenting the opportunity to her to take it over when I graduated. It just so happened that Casey introduced me to the online game just in time. So I never had that opportunity. So I was actually preparing to give it up but I wanted it to continue. I just knew that I wasn't going to be physically there anymore. So somebody else was going to do it, and that was going to be the end of it. And the hope was that 5 years later, 10 years later, I'd be able to come back on campus and it was still growing. So that was as far as I had envisioned it. Never would have thought that it would go to what it is now, ever.
How did that exposure to the online game change where you are today?
Oh, everything. So number one, I didn't understand the idea of online is foreign to a lot of us when we're first introduced to it. Right now, I mean, obviously it's 2022 now, so at least we see online a lot more frequently. So it's not as foreign of a concept. But back in 2017 and 2016, at least in physical therapy, it wasn't a thing. Like, you don't, like, what, like online, like that was as close to non-existence, right? Like a non-existent thing as you could get. Like, it had to be in person to be legit. And so the idea of online, when we were introduced to it, it was by our mentor, Greg Todd, who we were now starting to watch what he was doing. And I was like, wait a minute, he's actually like helping people for real, but they're in other parts of the country or sometimes other parts of the world. And so just the idea that we could take something that we had relied on it being in person and take it to a space where we could do it online and serve a lot of people. I mean, like, we would have never met me, right? Like all the way out in Alaska, like that would have never happened, right? And so, so that's where it kind of just opened some doors where we were like, wait a minute, like we could take care of anybody, like as long as they kind of, want the thing that we're trying to give them, like we could serve anybody from anywhere without being restricted. That in itself is pretty mind blowing. So that's what I would say to that.
With the exposure to being online, do you think that that kind of made you, I guess, like more open-minded and like kind of got your brain running to like do different business ideas?
I mean, yes and no. So I stayed pretty focused. So like I didn't really entertain a lot of different business ideas for a long time. Like it wasn't until really like 2021 when we started a secondary business. And that was years after we had been in our first business. So I think what it really kind of opened the doors for was just growth potential, right? So I didn't have to rely on the restrictions of having to do things physically. I could learn how other people, and it was kind of like crazy because initially I was like, oh, I have to learn from other physical therapists, when now it's just been a game of like, wait a minute, marketing is marketing. Sales is sales. So who's the best in the world at marketing online? Who's the best in the world at sales online? So it just opened up doors to like who we started listening to and who we started being guided by. And it just gave us the ability to take what they were doing and say, okay, like how could we try to do that for the students we serve and see if it works, and trial and error. And so that's more what it was, but it was still very focused. It was still very focused on one business. So I didn't really do a whole lot. My business partner is like, he's always been a lot more aware of like other financial opportunities. This whole world was new to me in general. So I was like, yo, I'm about to lock in on one thing. Let's get really good at it. Let's make it very profitable. Let's serve a lot of people. And then after that, I'll start learning the other stuff and adding other things in. And that's why it took us so long to even start another business. But now, obviously, the opportunities are, now we feel like we can do whatever we want. But that took years of focus and really kind of mastering our craft before even entertaining that.
So you talk about being super focused on one thing and just building that up and making that, or serving a lot of people and making, doing well financially with that. What were some of the hardest things in getting to that path of like building a successful business?
Um, our minds. Yeah, I'd say that's the hardest one. Because now looking back, I guess it's just the understanding that now in hindsight, obviously, there was no way we were ever going to accomplish something that we could not accept in our minds first, or at least like accept as being like possible or being legitimate, right? So part of it was the fact that like I had certain money beliefs growing up, right? So like, I grew up hearing things like money is the root of all evil. I grew up thinking that people who were wealthy were evil, right? Or were greedy. And so when those are the philosophies that you've been brought up in before you actually start to understand what money really is, which took years of like reframing, then you self-sabotage by nature, right? Because if all rich people are evil, then yeah, I want to serve a lot of people, but I really don't want to be rich, right? So those are like you're not saying it out loud, but internally that's what's happening. So you basically have a ceiling every single time, right? And so then when you start to like reframe how you understand it and you realize, wait a minute, like a lot of those principles were actually taught to us incorrectly because money like functions in a very different way from how we were taught about it growing up. Like when I started understanding those and we started to actually realize that that's how it really worked, that then we gave ourselves the permission to actually push harder, dream bigger. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we've probably acquired or learned over time is just that it's really in here, right? So it's like, you know, if I can't see myself making six figures with a business because of certain thoughts, then I'm never going to do it, right? Like it's never going to happen. And on top of that, you still have those other thoughts of online being this thing that's so abstract that it can't have a like you can't have a legit business online is what you're basically taught to think. Like if you tell a family member, yeah, you don't have this online business, oh that's cute. Like, you know, it's like it's not seen as a legitimate like thing, right? And so a lot of those internal false beliefs really were the thing that probably maybe held us back. I wouldn't even say hold us back because I feel like now looking back, we've grown well, and we like I can't regret any of it. But those are the things I had to learn, and we had to learn in order to give ourselves the permission to do what we're doing now. So and truthfully, I feel like it's the same now with whatever our next goals are, right? It's just still those thoughts of like, is that too much? And when you start having those mental games, then you're always going to self-sabotage because internally we always want to see ourselves as a good person, and anything that sabotages that feeling of me being a good person, we're always going to use that against ourselves. So if I feel like making money is bad, I don't want to be a bad person. So maybe I should just give away my stuff for cheap or for free and this. And you don't understand the psychological implications of that. The fact that if certain things are very, very cheap, you attract certain types of, it's a whole rabbit hole I could go down, but it starts with beliefs. So we have to change our beliefs in order to be able to have some of the things that we've been able to have happen, or in order to create some of the cool things we've been able to create for others and so much more. So I hope that was clear.
Yeah, change your mind and the rest will follow.
You got it. You got it.
Can you talk about like the mentors you had that kind of played a role in your growth up until this day?
Yeah. The greatest one is Greg Todd by far. Greg Todd for sure. And for him, I would say the greatest thing he's done for us is show us what's possible. He was the first Black physical therapist I had ever seen, ever. So that in itself was like, whoa, okay, cool. And then on top of that, to see someone that looked like myself and Casey doing what he was doing, that in itself was like, it's just barriers that you're breaking. It's like, oh, so I can do that as a Black man in physical therapy and serve a lot of people and make a lot of money. Okay, that's fair. And so it's a lot of that. But I would say the greatest thing Greg has done for the two of us is we've been able to watch how he lives. So like I live in Tampa Bay, and Greg lives in Tampa Bay as well. So we've grown to be very, very close. Like we're like family. And so watching how he manages his time, his energy, his family. So I have a family. I have a 19-month-old and a wife, right? So it's like with our family, it's like, how do you manage growing a business? How do you create certain opportunities for yourself and your family so you can have the time to be around each other, right? So I like at this point, like I'm 28, right? And so at this point, like I'm able to be at home as much as I want, you know. So it's like just watching someone else live it. It's one thing to hear people talk about it. When you're watching someone actually live it out, you're like, oh, this is what the lifestyle looks like. Okay, Like I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to get that, because now I'm seeing it. Now it's real. It's no longer abstract. It's not something that marketers say. You know how people always like, yeah, it's just some people say, but it's not real. It's like, no, like when I watch like for real, and what it's been able to do for him and his kids and his wife and his family, I was like, okay, done. Lock me in. So he's one. Another one is Myron Golden, who's actually our mentor's mentor. So Myron Golden, he's probably one of the best when it comes to human psychology in relation to sales, right? And so a lot of us, when we view sales or selling, we see it as a very kind of negative thing, because we've always seen it in relation to like a car dealership or pushy sales, right? Where someone's trying to convince you to do something, and just how he's been able to like peel back and say that's actually not sales. Like you've actually seen it incorrectly, right? Sales is persuasion, right? Sales is a lot of questions. Sales is a lot of like right now, we're all selling to each other. Like I'm selling to y'all that I'm super interested in being here. I'm selling to y'all that I don't know, like maybe I have something valuable to say, maybe not. I don't know. Like y'all are selling to me that y'all are like super invested in serving the people that y'all are trying to serve with this podcast. Like, so we're always selling to each other, but I think we've misconstrued it or misunderstood it. And so like the psychology of how the human brain works and how we make decisions, and the fact that when people go to buy, we live in America, the land of credit, right? So it's like so when people go to buy, it's an emotional decision. So it's like, how can I understand someone's problem so well and articulate them in a way where they feel like no one has understood me as well as you have, and then create a solution that literally gives them the thing that they've been dreaming of, but in a way that they'd be more than happy to exchange the money they have for whatever you have to offer. Like it's thinking like that, as opposed to thinking, oh, I got to be like so pushy, and it's like, no. So it's like, I would say those are the two greatest mentors I have had. And then obviously there's other things in between, like where I've learned like certain tools and certain strategies and things like that. And there's been other mentors that I've leaned to for that. But when it comes to like principles, like I'm a very like I love principles, right? So things that like stand the test of time. Like when it comes to principles and consistent ways and lifestyle, those are the two men. And Myron Golden is also a Black man as well. So it's like it's just, for me, it was just seeing myself, and he has an amazing marriage, and so it's like, okay, this is what it could look like, and like while having a phenomenal like life, while also being able to take care of your family and being present for them and having a good time and feeling fulfilled. Because when we're fulfilled, we have the energy to give to the people that we're serving. When we're not fulfilled, we carry that with us. Like if I'm not fulfilled as a physical therapist, my patients are going to feel like I don't really care about being there. So it's not going to serve them. It's also not going to serve the people at home, because now I'm going to the clinic. I'm not happy to be there. I'm not fulfilled being there. Now I'm going. So it's like we have to understand that fulfillment is a big thing. And so I learned that stuff from those two men. So that's my answer.
We've been talking about exposure a lot. We did our last episode I released was on exposure, and we talked about Greg Todd also and how big he was for us, and similar to you, seeing the life he lives and the people he's able to help, and tuning into his events, and you see the energy and the passion and just like the blueprint of, all right, you want to live this life, this is how I got here. He's very transparent, very open, and without it, we're probably not doing this. We probably don't meet each other. So shout out to GT first off.
The man himself.
The man himself. But for you, what do you feel like when you like taking us back to when you first got involved into his world? What would you say was the thing you were working on the most, and how did you go about or getting better at that? I don't know if weakness is the right word, but you know what I mean.
So in relation to myself or in relation to business?
Both.
Self-trust would probably be the biggest one for in relation to myself, because I am a people pleaser by nature. And so and I've still battled with it even since then, but it was pretty evident that I cared a lot about what people thought. And so that was a big deal. And it was also what was holding me back, because I cared a lot about what people in my family or my circle thought about too. And they had a certain way of viewing the world, and I was being introduced to a new way of viewing the world. So I kind of felt like a middle child for a bit, right? And so I think personal, that's my answer. Business, Man, that's like back in 2018, 2017, 2016. I would say it's just learning how to like figure out people's problems and communicate them back to them in a way that actually makes sense, right? Because at that time I was in my third year of physical therapy school. We are learning a whole bunch of jargon, right? A whole bunch of big words, and so I had to unlearn how to communicate with big words. Like to this day, like Casey and I spoke to our uh, to the PT program that we graduated from. Like we spoke to them and presented on sales and marketing and all that stuff for 2 whole lectures, right? And I realized, I was like, yo, the whole time we never used any big words. And every professor we had ever had like dropped like big words. That's how we were taught. Like, and so I was like, man, like I've really unlearned that. Right. And so when I speak to patients, it's always like just I'm talking to them like they're a fifth grader, right? When I speak to our clients, it's the same thing. And so I think the thing I was working on the most was learning how to communicate in a way where it was clear, it was easy to listen to, anybody could understand it, but it also like hit the pain points that people are having, right? And so I would say those at that time, those would be my 2 answers.
How did you improve that skill of talking in simple terms, and like a fifth grader, well, to a fifth grader?
Uh, how did I improve that? Like skill of talking?
Yep.
Reps. So just repetition. Like at that time, we used to do like a live, like a live chat every single Thursday. We had a podcast. I think we've dropped a podcast episode every Wednesday for the last like 4 to 5 years. We still do, right? And so it was just reps. And I think, man, I actually posted it in the Acceptance System alumni page some months back. I posted like my first Facebook live stream. Like bro, it was terrible. At that time, I thought it was good, but it was not good at all. And so it's just reps. And you just realize that the more you do something, the better you get at it. And I think that's the answer. There wasn't any like tactic or like, it was just the awareness that I needed to speak simply, right, and clearly, and then just repetitions. And I think when you do stuff live, you can actually get people's feedback. And so if it's clear, if they understand it, then you're at least conveying what you want to convey. And if they're not, if they're quiet and saying nothing, it's like, oh, maybe whatever I'm saying is going over their head. So 100% just repetition, just over and over and over and over and over. I mean, you're talking like 2 to 3 like live trainings, like a week for 5 years straight. It's like, and like, and that's the baseline. You have even more. So it's like, it's just repetitions, and then eventually you get better. And I feel like right now, I feel like I'm a lot better than I was then, but I'm pretty sure 5 years from now, I'll be like, yo, Joseph in 2022 was really not as great as he thought he was in terms of how he communicated. And it's just doing it over and over. And then you just get easier at what it gets easier to do. So I hope that was clear.
All right, so I'm gonna take you back to what was this? 2018, summer 2018. I was in season 3 of the Accept System. Doing our thing. We got 5 people in our group. All right, we all get into school. Season 4 hits in January. You guys explode to have, I think it was over 100 in that season.
It was, I think it was like 103.
Something like that.
Yeah, man, what a time.
So to go from 5 to 103, what was going through your mind when you and Casey just saw the number of people joining the Accept System just keep going up, up, up?
Shoot. That's it. So I mean, I think part of it is just it was cool. We were definitely in the moment. I don't know. I don't know what I expected. But it was just kind of mind-blowing to see that kind of a wave. It meant that clearly we were doing something right, and whoever our mentors were up to something. So I was like, oh, Greg knew what he was talking about, And so but I think part of it came with overwhelm. So on one side it was exciting, on the other side kind of freaked us out. Well, at least it freaked me out. I can't speak for Casey. It kind of freaked me out because instantly I was like, man, we just went from having 5 people on a Zoom session, it's like literally this plus like a few more people, to having a wave of people. So we had to like restructure a lot about our program. a lot of, how we used to run the program. We can't run it like that anymore. There's like 520 people in it right now, so it's like it's not possible anymore. And so that was the first time we were like, okay, we have to create new systems, or at least better systems, because up until that point, the system was us. The system was, you schedule a call with Casey and Joseph, you get on a call with Casey and Joseph, they walk you through A, B, C, and D. And at that point, we're like, okay, I can't do that with 100 people. So, and yeah, so in 2019, because that was what, January 2019, right? So 2019 was the year that I was getting married too. So I was like, okay, I know my life's about to change. So we have to restructure how we do a lot of stuff. So yeah, it was like I think it was the first big shift that we had in terms of how we did business. Because it was an awareness that if we were going to grow this, we had to give ourselves the tools and the team. We had to build a team. We had to give ourselves a team and the resources we need to like actually be okay with growing and still have students get the outcome they wanted. And I think that was also the first time we were confident about the fact that we could get people into PT school. So I don't know if you remember this, Mang, but prior to that, we never used to say we can get people into PT school. We used to say we would give them all the resources they need to feel like a good applicant, right? Very, very, very distinct difference. One had very, like we were confident, but part of it's like, you're just like, can we really do it? Like, I know what we're teaching them is the stuff, but like, what if they can't? And there's something that shifted that application cycle where we're like, no. We know this is it. And so the way we talked about it changed. And so we were like, this is the like we wanted people to understand that we were building like the number one resource for people to get into PT school if they did not have any other way. And to do that, we had to basically step into that reality. So I think that was part of that psychology too, of like, okay, like we owning this thing big time, and the rest is history.
Did you ever question yourself when it came to how much you were charging for your services? Like, is this too much or is this too little?
All the time. All the time. Wait, how did I do it?
How do you navigate those feelings? Like,
oh man. So someone asked me this question yesterday, actually. And let me give you the answer I would have given you like a year or two ago, and the answer I'll give you now, because I think both are important. So the answer I would have given you like a year or two ago is basically our coach told us to raise our rates. And we were paying him too much money to not listen to him. So I did it, but I was scared senseless, right? I'll give you a little, y'all cool with me sharing like some numbers about how the pricing changed, right? So when we first released the program back in fall of 2017, I wanted to release it for $75. To give you perspective, right now, that program, it's obviously changed and evolved over time, but it's a $5,000 program and people are happy to pay it, right? So that's a huge jump. And so back then, I just didn't understand the value of what we really had. Part of it was just like what I just said, is just I didn't step into the fact that this was a tool to help them save time and get into school at like the fastest possible, right? Like within the fastest possible time frame, because they would learn all the things that usually lead to like mistakes and whatnot. They would actually circumnavigate those like now, right? So we went from like me thinking $75. Our coach was like, that's bad, don't do that. So we made it $250, and I nearly like vomited, right? $250 for me was like how in the world like charge somebody that much money? Like, it's a student, they're broke, they ain't got nothing. Like, and so that would be the answer I would have given you before. It's just the fact that like our coach said no, raise it. Like I remember the first time he said make it 1,000, make it 1,500, make it 2. I was like, what are you talking about? But I was like, I either like listen to him or I don't. But clearly he knows something we don't, because he has a lot more money. So I was like, let's just do it. And so that's the first answer. Today, my answer would be different. Today, I have it's a lot easier for me to charge a lot of money, right? And the reason is because I understand what I'm actually giving people. When you understand the gem you're actually giving people and the problems you're actually solving, because it's not about, I think a lot of people think, oh, my program's so good. It's not about that. It's about like, what is the cost of not getting help from you. And when you can articulate that so well, and you can understand what's actually happening, like what people like, think in life, I learned this a few years ago. In life, you're always paying. Like, you pay to know or you pay to not know, right? Paying to know is usually a lot cheaper than paying to not know, right? So for a student, for example, that's a pre-PT that has gotten rejected from PT school 2 years in a row, what are they really paying? They're paying in anxiety. They're paying in frustration. They're paying in a lot of overwhelm. They're also paying because every year you don't get into school is a year removed from being a physical therapist. So if you want to quantify that, you literally say, hey, if a PT is getting like 80K out of school or 75K out of school, that's 75K each year you don't get in. Right. And then it's also like, how much money am I spending already to like retake class? Like, you start to actually understand, like, this is what we're actually solving for people. And when you get good at communicating that, then you get people thinking, you right. I don't know what I'm doing. And I have gotten rejected 2 years in a row. And I was just going to do more of the same thing. And it was probably going to give me the same outcome. And I don't want to waste another year being a physical therapist. Can y'all help me? Right. And so I think that's part of it. And I think also proof is huge. So when people start seeing like who you've worked with and like the kinds of things you've done, like, I mean, like one of our students had a 2.4 GPA out of, like, when they graduated college. And so when people hear that, they're like, he went from a 2.4 GPA and this weekend he just graduated. Like he just graduated. Like he's a physical therapist now. So it's like, when you hear that, you're like, wait, so I've been overwhelmed about my 2.9 and somebody had a 2.4? Shoot, y'all know something that I need to know, right? Another thing is people are isolated, right? They don't have people around them. So it's like, if I don't have the right people around me to help me out, if everyone I'm around, my family, my advisor, my friends, make me feel like I can't, then I got to put myself around different people and whatever I need. So now you start understanding what you're actually offering. And I think for most people, they don't invest enough time or ask enough questions from their target person that they're trying to serve to understand the problems well enough to realize the problem that they're actually solving, right? Most people are like, yeah, we're helping them feel better about themselves. That's a very superficial answer, right? But when you can go deep and understand what, like, at like the personal level, familial, like for parents that are pre-PTs, it's a different level, right? Because like parents, I got parents that are like, yeah, like I'm going back to school because I want to show my kids what it looks like to go after your dreams. It's heavy. It's heavy. So, and then I think the other part too, and then this is the last part of my answer. The other part too is we've realized that when people pay a lot more, they get better results because they're a lot more invested. So if you ever like think of the things that you've ever purchased that were cheap, you didn't pay them like much mind, right? If right now I charged $100 for our coaching program, which would be like terrible, like I'd have to, I don't know, even $1,000 is too cheap, right? So it's like if I did that, who you attract are people that basically will buy it, and then they're like, okay, I have this as a resource, let me put it to the side, let me do other stuff, maybe I'll use it later, and then they never use it. Because they did, like, when you don't invest, you're not really going to pay much mind to it. But if I pay a lot of money, if I'm like, yo, I had to talk to my parents to help me fund this thing, you best believe I ain't messing around with this, right? Now the investment level goes up, people take themselves more seriously, and they get the results. And now they're like, yo, this just justified the reason why I did this in the first place. And so when you pay, like, it's a different game when you play that way. And believe it or not, it's actually easier to sell to people when it's a lot more money. And that was a concept that did not make sense to me once upon a time, but today it's a whole lot easier. Like we get so much less pushback. It's because psychologically, I mean, think about it. Like, if something's cheap, you can't think it's the best. If something's expensive, psychologically, you actually, like, as a human being, you think it's the best now. Especially if it has a lot of proof, you're like, it has to be the best because I've never seen anything this expensive before. And so now you're like, if it's the best, I need the best. And for the people that want the best, they're actually willing to figure out how to fund it and pay for it and all that stuff. So little longer answer, but I wanted y'all to kind of hear the full shift over time. So hope that was clear.
Yeah, and I think like you said, I think you have to pay for stuff and be willing to invest in yourself first. Because if you ain't willing to invest in yourself, then there's no point in investing in someone else to do it for you, because no one else can really get you to where you want to be. You gotta be willing to take that leap yourself first. So now that it's a $5,000 package, and what kind of people are you looking to join the accept system now? Because I remember there was a point where, you guys added an application cycle, an application, and then you started, trying to weed out certain applicants. So what would be the ideal applicant you're looking for now?
Yeah, I mean, so right now the ideal applicant is someone that is tired of guessing. So a student that's just like, you know what, I want this so bad that I don't want to play with time and guess my way through it, right? Also a student that feels stuck, like with the key things, right? Feels stuck with not knowing how to stand out. Feels stuck with maybe trying it before, so they've applied before and it has not worked out as well. Don't know what they're even aiming for, because most students are basically shooting in the dark and kind of copying what their classmates are doing, or doing whatever their advisor told them to do, which, we could go down that rabbit hole. But students who are overwhelmed, stuck, don't want to guess, are ready to take full ownership of their journey, and they just want to get in. They're like, hey, listen, I know my goal is not to get into school, it's to become a physical therapist. I fully understand that, but I'm not willing to jeopardize time anymore. I don't want to play with time and waste another year of potentially me getting to my end goal, which is becoming a clinician. So those are the students we look for. And that's pretty much it. Like you have to be coachable. And if you feel like you know it all, then we're not the people for you. If you feel like you don't know what to do next, then hey, you already know where to find us. So that's the answer.
How do you go about getting your client, like the students to join? Like, do you do sales calls, and do you find that it's hard to do objection coaching with them, because they're students and typically don't have as much revenue as working with adults that have jobs?
Uh, so how do we bring them in? We have a few key ways, right? So that's a good question, by the way. So there's a few ways. Number one, we've done what we call master classes. Other people call them webinars. So we've done those for years, right? And so a lot of that is pre-framing, right? Because if someone's going to come and pay you a lot of money, there's a lot of pre-framing that's super, super important, right? There's certain questions you have to have them ask yourself. If someone gets on a call with myself or Casey and is like, never heard of y'all, here I am, I heard y'all can kind of help me, that's not the right time to be on a call with us, right? There has to be other steps beforehand. So something has to pre-frame them, get them to ask themselves the right question, to the point where they're like, I see that there's certain things that are major blind spots, and if I don't figure these out, it might cost me an acceptance letter. So I need help, right? And so if it's after a master class, if it's after we do panels where we sit down with some of our students who have had certain obstacles, like we had a low GPA panel where we had some of our students that had really low GPAs who got into PT school, kind of talk about their experience. After that, we always say, hey, if you want help, here's the next step. And so it's usually to apply. Like if they're like, I want a guide, I'm like, yo, I want a guide. I want access to the answers, right? So we have a resource library that basically gives people the answers to their biggest questions. I want access to accountability. I want access to a community that will help me figure this thing out. Then we have them apply. So they fill out an application. And then on that application, we know by the time I see an application come through, I already know whether they're a match or not, right? And then they get on a call with myself or Casey. And by that point, it's like there's certain people where you already know, you're like, you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna buy it. Like if it means that much. Like I have students where I've had to talk to the parents, and the parents understand the pain, and they've seen their kids struggle, and the biggest thing for them is just trust, right? But at this point, we've just had so much out there that there's too much proof, I guess. And so it's a lot easier now. Earlier on, it was a little harder, right? Because you don't have as much proof of results and all that stuff. But I think at this point, it's just gotten a lot easier. But yeah, you just if you've done those things properly, pre-framed, ask the right questions at a time, have them apply. When they're applying, they're asking themselves even more questions. There's so much self-awareness by the time they come on that call. They're just like, I know I need help, right? And so then we have a strategy call with them. On that call, if it if I know they're ready, if Casey knows they're ready, then we present them and say, hey, like we have a coaching well, I don't even say we have a coaching program. It's like, would you like help with this? And they're like, yeah, okay, well, would you like our best resource for help? Yes, please. Okay, great. Here's that resource. And then I introduce them to our program and here's how it works. And then after that, they ask questions. And most of the time they're like, all right, cool. Some people are able to pay for it up front. Some people got money, I don't know, or they've been saving for something. But then we also have payment options. We have funding now. We have payment plans. And so there's ways, like if the student's a match, then we have ways of them figuring out how to invest in the program. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it's right now at this point, it's mostly through application to a call. And then eventually it'll be, you know, a call with like one of our sales team members, because that's the goal, to have a sales team and all that stuff. But right now it's myself or Casey. So hope that was clear.
How did you get involved with the funding team you use? Did you always do that?
Yeah, it's, we just recently released that as an option now. So for a long time we were doing payment plans, and so you could break stuff up over like 6 months or 3 months or whatnot, right? And so, but recently, one of our coaches uses funding. A lot of the bigger names in the coaching industry use funding, right? So if they're having like super like big offers, like, you know, $10,000 offers, $20,000 offers, $30,000 offers, they're using funding because most people don't have that kind of money up front. And so basically he mentioned to us, he was like, hey, with programs that are proven, there's like certain checklists, because they had to work with certain programs that had proof. Like they needed to make sure that you were like legit and you had done it for a certain period of time and you get results and all that stuff. But you had to have a product that was $5,000 or more. I was like, oh, we fall within that category. And so basically we hired the same team that our coach uses, that our coach's coach uses, same exact people. And then now that gives our students an option to do funding, which is cool, because as a business, so how it works for those of y'all that might be curious, how it works is, as a business, cash flow is huge, right? So it's like on the front end, the reason why you don't want to do like super long payment plans. Is it cool if I talk about the psychology of payments, right? So it's like the reason why most people don't want to do super long payment plans from the business owner standpoint is that people drop off, right? So it's like, it's just so much time in between that there's so little investment that it just causes other stuff. You know, it's like people can drop off payments, people can drop off this. It's just a whole thing. It's a headache, right? The other part too is that it limits cash flow. So it's like, if I have like 100 clients that are paying me a certain amount of money over 18 months or over 24 months, I ain't gonna have no money like month to month to actually do stuff with, to actually grow the business, to actually invest in things that would help us like catapult it. So you don't have capital to do a whole lot with. And so what funding does is it basically bridges the gap. It gives you the best of both worlds. So what it does is, if people qualify for funding, then it gives them the entire amount upfront. So it's kind of like how student loans work, right? So it's like, it gives them the entire amount. So like for us, it'd be like the full $5,000. And then once they get the full $5,000, it comes to us. So for us, cash flow wise, we got 5Gs that week done, right? But for them, they now work with a funding company to spread out their payments over a much longer period of time. And if at some point they could like pay it off faster, they can. And it just like, it changes the game so that now they're locked in, they're able to take advantage of the resources. We're good. But now you don't even deal with me when it comes to money. You deal with the funding company. And so that's a really, really cool option where you can be in the $5,000 program, but pay like $170 something a month, right? And if you ever like have the money to pay it all faster, you can, and they won't penalize you. So so that's the best of both worlds. You give more of the right people the opportunity to work with you, because they, like, even if they don't have the full funds right then and there, but as a business, you have the cash flow to still continue to grow and, you know, do what you got to do, because that's huge. That's huge. So hope that was clear.
When you start, so now it's been a couple years and PPT grind's been going well. You mentioned your family and they're doing well. I know when my first year at PT school, I came down to visit you in the clinic and you were still working, I think, part-time. Can you kind of talk about that transition to when you started not being in a clinic as often and what kind of went into that decision making?
Say that last part.
What went into the decision making to not be in a clinic as often?
Um, that's a good question. So I knew at some point that I'd have to like, I wanted to create more time to be at home. And part of that is the lifestyle that I had seen with Greg. And you know, and it's like, okay, like, so really the shift was during our honeymoon. So back in 2019, I got married June 9th of 2019. And so we were in Roatan for our honeymoon for a month. Well, it's like 3 weeks, right? And so while we were there, like I'm over here like now like life slows down enough for you to just like think about it. And while we were on that trip, I was like, I don't like the last time I worked full time as a PT was before that, before I got married. Like I have never worked as a full-time PT since I got married, right? And so on that trip, I was like, this doesn't even make sense anymore. Like if we're gonna grow pre-PT grind and I'm gonna be present for like my wife, and we knew our timeline for having kids and all that stuff, I was like, I got to figure this out now. So literally, like while I was on my honeymoon, I contacted one of the owners of the company that I work at, and we worked something out to where I was able to come down from 40 hours a week to 20 hours a week once I was back. And so that was where it kind of started. And then by the end of that year, I actually stepped away from treating for a whole year. And so it was just kind of it was a time where, and it was interesting because this is the end of 2019. The pandemic starts hits spring of 2020. So by that time, like what people felt, I never felt that because I had already like stepped away from working full time, like by that point. So when people were getting like laid off and stuff, so I never experienced that. But a lot of it was just wanting to be present. I think it was just kind of tasting it and realizing it's like, wait, like I have an extra 20 hours to think, an extra 20 hours to create, an extra 20 hours to actually feel rested and give and have more energy. And I was like, and to give to my wife, like literally when I noticed how, because my wife and I have been great friends for years, right? When I noticed how much more energy I had at the end of the day, like to be present with her and now our son, it was like, oh, that was a no-brainer. And so for a whole year I stepped away. I went back to treat the start of 2021. And that decision was mainly because I still love being a PT, but I also needed something else to occupy my mind because like my mind was just business, 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 right? I just needed something else to kind of like switch it off because like I'd go to sleep and I'm still solving problems in my head. It was just kind of crazy. And so I was like, I need something else that I'm doing that for that time I'm not thinking about the business because it's just healthy. It's just healthy. It's like finding a hobby. It's like playing basketball, man. You know, it's just like in that moment, your brain is just somewhere else. But I also thrive off of solving problems for people. So being a clinician or treating in the clinic was that for me. So I work I work like 8 to 10 hours a week now, and that's it. And so I work a few hours on Monday, a few hours on Friday. The rest of the time is business or family or whatever. And then it gives you freedoms too. So that now you're like, hey, like, and people also know that you don't need to be there. So it just kind of creates like kind of a cool dynamic. But yeah, it's like the best of both worlds. So that's how it happened.
So I feel like I kind of I have an inkling of what your answer to this question is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Knowing all that you know now, ability to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, would you still go back to and invest in PT and become a PT, knowing everything that you know now?
Of course I would.
Why?
Easy. Two things. PT is phenomenal. Like PT is great. I think the idea that you have to practice as a PT, I think that's where we kind of limit ourselves, right? But the space of PT is beautiful. Think about it like this, right? So it's like, and I think now it's even more with the skills that like we've learned, myself and Casey over the years in terms of like sales, marketing, business, right? It's like it's almost like the sweet spot between learning those skills and executing them within the field of physical therapy. It's like magic. So it's like the opportunity is through the roof. Like for example, if right now all I did was learn business or all I did was learn marketing and I was just trying to do it to the general marketplace, not physical therapy, because it's general, now I'm competing with everyone else that does that. And now I'm basically kind of lost in the wind, right? But when you can take those skills and bring them into this pond called physical therapy, that where a lot of people ain't doing it at all, you're able to win on a completely different level because now you're able to innovate, right? So it's like now it's like we have this freedom to just create ideas and innovate and all this stuff and create solutions for people, whether it's us treating patients or us helping people that are going to treat patients, right? And you give people the tools to actually love what they do. So 100%, PT has too much opportunity for me to pick something else, but I actually genuinely love PT. And I think the idea that I don't work full time doesn't clash with that at all. Like even if I stopped treating as a PT, I would still love PT, right? And so 1,000,000%, if I could do it again, I'd do it the exact same way. The only difference would be I would have probably tried to learn some of those other skills faster. That's it.
Yeah, I think when you bring it to that like physical therapy pond, you're helping, like the ability to help people in a specific way, like kind of eliminates all your competition. Especially since it's not something we touch on in school. So the need for it is much greater than if you were to just do it for the general public.
Agreed. 100%.
I have a question in regards to like learning those skills earlier. What do you think? What skills do you think should be at least exposed in the physical therapy curriculum?
Communication. We're not taught how to communicate. I'd say that's number one, easy. So how to communicate, like understanding the people we serve, it's weird. Like it's like we think we're going to treat PTs for the rest of our lives. It's like you're dealing with people that don't have a clue what you're talking about, right? And they got a problem, right? And so when we're using all these heavy words and jargon, it's this, we're going to utilize traction to, that's like, what? They ain't got no idea what you're talking about, right? They're like, my back hurts. What's traction? So it's like communication is huge. Like simplify what you're saying, get clear about it, get so good about it that a fifth grader would eat it up and be like, I know exactly what you mean, right? And if you could do that, then you could basically help anybody, because most people speak at a third grade level at least or higher. So if I can speak at a third grade level, my ability to impact more people skyrockets. So communication is huge, because whatever we think is communication in school ain't really communication. So I think the other one is just skills like the basics of marketing, skills like the basics of like selling and what selling is. I think people don't realize that in physical therapy, that's what we do, is we sell. We are salespeople. Like when you do an evaluation, that's all you're doing. You selling somebody. You selling some, like when somebody comes into physical therapy and they're like, well, I don't think PT will work. Somebody else has sold them on the fact that what you're about to do won't work. So if you just say, all right, well, let's just give it a shot, they're not going to get better. And the reason why they will not get better is because they've already persuaded themselves, or they've already been persuaded that it's not going to work. So they're just there to basically check some boxes. And after a few visits, they're just going to stop showing up. And then, so now it's like, who's to blame? Well, you could have actually shifted it if you learned how to basically ask different questions. And sales is really question asking, right? And then presenting them with like the ability to understand, hey, like here's how we can help them. Here's like I love pulling up, like with my patients, I pull up an app called Complete Anatomy, and I teach them about what's actually going on in third grade level, like third to fifth grade level language. But I'm actually showing them what's happening in their shoulder. And by the end, they're like, nobody has ever shown that to me. So that's how it works. Yes. So here's what we're going to do with physical therapy. We're actually going to work on this, building up the stability here and then here. And once that's done, you'll actually be able to move your shoulder again without any pain. I know you just had surgery, 6 weeks ago, but that's what we can do over the next few months. Right. And then you add it with a story. It's like, hey, like I actually had a patient, a year ago who was in a very similar situation. And the biggest things they were struggling with were boom, 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 same exact thing. Because remember, people want to relate with someone. People want to feel like it'll work for them. Like in life, all people want to do, like if they're going to buy what you present, and for us, it's buying what we do as like clinicians to help them through the field of physical therapy, right? But they need to believe that it'll work. And they need to believe that they can do it. If you can get people to believe those two things, they will do whatever you say. Right. And so learning how to actually sell, that's that. Right. And so like learning the art of selling. And I think we've been taught like that selling is bad. We've been taught there's certain phrases that used to be brought up in PT school. This is you're helping people. You're not trying to take their money. And I was like, what you talking about? Like people are paying for PT. Of course, like, but we're not taking their money, but we have to learn how to create value for them in a way where they're happy to give their money. Right? The fact that we have clinics where people are struggling to get a patient to pay a $5 copay is not something where we should complain to the government. It's not something we should complain to whoever. It's a matter of you learning how to actually like ask certain questions and sell, right? And persuade, I guess, is probably an even better word. And so I would say that's huge. And then marketing, how to actually get known, how to have people know that you can actually help them, right? So our business dies without marketing. Like everything we do is marketing. Whenever you put up a reel, that's marketing. All you're doing is creating awareness that you can help with a certain thing. And you don't create awareness by saying, hey, get physical therapy. Remember, most people don't even know what PTs really do. I didn't know until I walked into some high school room and I probably never would have afterwards. And so really marketing properly is saying, okay, how can I talk about the problems they're having? So if I'm dealing with back patients or people with back aches or people with like a herniated disc, then I'm talking to people as like, hey, like have you had have you struggled with like back issues to where when you stand up you kind of feel like some some tingly feeling in your feet, to where you're not even able to get in and out of your car properly, to where you're not even able to walk with your spouse like in the evenings, right? Especially if I'm dealing with a population that's like, you know, just retired. The people that just retire are like now they have like a new lease on life. Like I don't work for nobody anymore. And so now they're like, well, want to be active and stuff like that. So you have to talk in their language. That's part of marketing, but we're not taught that. So communication, sales, marketing, but doing it the right way. And if we knew that, man, first of all, people would know that we could help them. People would know where to find us. And when they showed up, they'd actually be able to get better because they would actually buy into the fact that we could help them because we actually brought them into the conversation. We asked enough questions. We knew how to guide them through it. And we knew how to talk in a 5th grade level or below to where they could be like, oh, okay, all right, let's do this PT thing because I don't want to have no surgery. And so yeah, that's my answer.
And that's what I appreciate about the program that you and Casey provide about Cash in Class. Like you guys help people get into PT school, but you also give them access to learn these skills if they so choose, if they want to go in that direction. It's not for everybody, but if you want the option to learn how to make some more additional income, it's there.
100%. Yeah, no, it's there. But I think for many people, it's just not knowing that it's an option. It's one thing to choose not to learn it. It's another thing to not know that there is a way anyway. And so yeah, 100% agree.
What would you say for yourself and for the business in the next 5 to 10 years, goals that you have for yourself and for PPG?
So 5 to 10 years, you talking financially, you talking like vision, what you talking?
We talking all of it. We talking vision, we talking money,
Okay. So money wise, 5 to 10 years. So 5 years, let's do 5 years because 5 years I know. 5 years, I wanted to generate anywhere between $5 to $10 million a year, like no questions asked. I want pre-PT grind to be the thing that people think about. Like if they sniff the field of physical therapy, I don't want them to think about physical therapy and not think about pre-PT grind in the same thought. Like I want, I truly, just because I know what we're doing for students and I know that they're not getting it taught to them like this anywhere else, I want it to be the gateway for the profession, because what it will do is, number one, it'll change the way people see their capabilities, right? So one thing that we teach our students is the fact that there's 2 doors, right? There's two doors in regards to guidance or help to getting to your end goal, right? And the first door is the closed door, right? Closed door guidance is what I call it. And closed door guidance is what we've been taught by many of our advisors and family members. Basically, what that means is at some point I'll be too old. At some point I will have a GPA that's too low. At some point I would have tried enough times that it's about time to quit, right? And so most of us have been brought up in that. So we think that there's a certain point where we've done too much. We've done everything we can. It's never going to happen. It was a cool dream. We really wanted it. I really don't want to do anything else in my life, but I guess it'll never work. So that's closed door. And that's basically what most people have done. That's why you can sit down with somebody that's like, yeah, I wanted to be a physical therapist, or I wanted to be, it didn't work out, but it didn't work out because at some point they felt like it was time to quit. That's closed door. What we teach is open door. And open door simply states there's always a next step. There's always a next step. As long as you're clear on what you want, outcome-wise, as long as you're clear on why you want to be this thing, whether it's physical therapy or anything else, there's always a way. Let's figure that out. But you just have to understand that at every single point where you feel frustrated, just understand there's a way. As long as you're willing to receive that, then you won't stay down as long. And you'll ask different questions, as opposed to asking things like, how will I ever? Now you say, who has figured it out? How can I do this? Who has done it? All your questions have an answer that gets you closer to your desire every single time. So I want physical therapy I want pre-PT grind to be the gateway to the profession, because I believe it does that. And I think on the other side, it actually better prepares our clinicians of the future. Because what Greg is doing is it. Like what he teaches is literally it, right? But I feel like we have to start hearing that stuff early. And when that's the way we're brought up thinking, you basically 5 to 10 years from now, you have new grads that are coming in without the option of feeling like they have to leave the profession in order to make it worth the financial investment. Right? You have new grads that feel like they have options. They do not feel confined to only practice. They can do whatever the heck they want within the field of physical therapy because it's got so many different opportunities. But most people don't see it as opportunities, right? And so yeah. But in terms of income, yeah, I mean, no less than 5 million for sure. Like Greg and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I was like, yeah, bro. And this is how it's gonna happen. Yada yada yada. But that's just one business. There's still another one. so yeah, we ain't going anywhere. But you always have to dream big and then figure out, okay, how do we reverse engineer? And then same thing, who's done it, and what has it taken for them to do it? And so hope that answered it.
Yes, and you dropped a lot for us today, a lot for the listeners whenever this comes out. What would you say if you could give 2 to 3 things you want listeners to take away from this conversation today? What do you want them to take away from this?
Good question. So what I would say is, number one, get crystal clear on what you want and why. Right? I think so many of us have been, I don't know, like we give in to what our environment tells us to think, right? So let's start with family, right? So we all love our families. I love my family. My family's amazing, right? But it's like even with like your parents or your relatives, like just understand that they have a certain way of looking at the world because of their experiences. And so that might fall in line with what you want, and it might not. You just got to get clear on what you want, right? And then once you get that clear, I think the second thing is just realizing that there's always a way to figuring out how to make that like not only the dream that you imagined, right? So like we asked some of our students recently, we're like, what do you imagine? Like prior to them learning any of this stuff, man, right? It's like what have you imagined like in your career? Well, I want to own a clinic, and then I want to travel, and then I want to. People got dreams. So at some point, remember, closed guidance. At some point, those dreams were stifled, right? And so it's staying clear on that and realizing that it's super possible to make all those things happen, right? And then the last thing is just always ask who has the answer and how do they do it? Who has the answer? How do they do it? And if you do that, you'll always get a lot closer to what you desired than most people who do not. And just realize that your surroundings factor into that. Ask yourself the question why. Like if you feel certain things, certain fears, certain doubts, why? Well, because of this. Why? Like start asking yourself why more, and you'll start realizing that the biggest fears you have, the biggest doubts you have, really aren't what you thought they were. And And yeah, you just peel the layers, and you start to really realize that a lot of the things that have a hold on you currently and are leading you to self-sabotage or getting your own way really are not as significant as you might think. And once you realize how to deal with that, then you can basically do whatever you desire with your career. And I'm not saying that to even be flighty at all. It's crazy how, like, if I had heard this like 5 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, that's so cute. That's like it's like nice motivationally. Like, man, like, actually, I'll say this. I had a friend a few years ago who told me this, and this is probably the best way to explain this. She said a lot of the most cliches, or she said cliches are simply profound statements that have been improperly and overly used to the point where their real value is overlooked. I heard that and I was like, oh shoot, right? So it's like it's just the idea that like things that like you hear like, oh yeah, that's cute. It's like, no, like that's actually probably the closest thing to the truth. But you've been led to think that because it sounds so ideal that it's actually impossible. And that's part of that narrative coming in again. And it's like now obviously being where we're at. And I wouldn't say we're anywhere close to where we want to be. Trust me, like where we are now is the dream of where I wanted to be 5 years ago. But now it's like you have new goals, right? And so I think it's just now looking back, I'm like, yo, the people that literally said that stuff, they were saying the truest of truths. Right. And that's something that I just want people to kind of like keep in mind when you're hearing a message like this and you're like, oh, that sounds ideal. No, like ask yourself, why do you feel that? Is it because you've never seen it? So just because you've never seen it doesn't mean it's not real. You just have to ask yourself who has done it. And currently in this day and age, online takes away all the excuses, right? Because now you can find those same people that are living that online virtually as coaches, as mentors, as all these different things. Just watch them, watch how they live. Ask yourself questions like, wait, why is this person showing up all the time? Like what's got to be going on in their life for them to be this excited to show up every single day? What's got to be going on their life for them to never seem stressed during a pandemic, right? For them to actually give more, like y'all, you start like now you start putting pieces together and you're like, this is very different from the environment that I'm currently in at home. And once you start understanding, oh, they must know something that I've never been introduced to, then that's where now you're well on your way to uncovering some pretty phenomenal stuff. So that's what I would say.
Y'all heard them, man. Go find people that are living the life you want to live. Ask yourself why, and you'll be well on your way to get into where you're supposed to be at. Joseph, where can people find you if they have questions or questions?
Honestly, just look up pre-PT grind. That's probably the best way. On any platform, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, podcast, whatever, just at pre-PT grind. And if you're interested in the field of physical therapy, cool, follow us and hang out. If you're not interested, just kind of watch how we do what we do. And if anything's of value, then run with it. If it's not, that's cool too. But that's probably the best place.
I appreciate you coming on the pod. Key, anything else you want to add?
No, just thank you for coming on. Everything you said was very insightful. I like the conversation. So thanks for coming on again.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you both for having me here. This was absolutely amazing. I love these conversations. I love the fact that this is what you're introducing your audience to. And we need more of this for sure, because I think we're getting to a time where people are at least starting to get a little bit more familiar with these kinds of topics. But I think now it's like, just making it concrete so people actually do something about it, right? You got the people that are what I would call information junkies. So they love to listen to stuff like this, but they do nothing with it. Right? So it's like now we might get to a point where people actually start taking action on it, and they're like, oh, this actually kind of works. And so so this is super cool. Just super honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. The information's out there. You gotta go find it.
That's a fact.
But we'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Key and Audio Experience.
Peace.